Alrighty, how's it going, everybody? Welcome back to EMPM, that stands for Engineering Major, Philosophy Minor. Hope you guys are having a good Sunday evening. It is October 24th, 2021 at the time of filming this. The time is about 8:27 p.m. I don't really know why I feel like I should tell you guys that. I guess it's because sometimes it takes me a while to get these videos out, and sometimes the release date isn't the actual film date. So earlier today, I saw what was a really incredible talk on Young America's Foundation, and I'll just flip over to the screen right now. So this is called The Victims of Socialism. This is a guy named George Harbison. I highly recommend that people watch this entire talk. It's really intense. There are some really insane images in it, which we are going to show some of in this video. And the title of this video obviously is The Victims of Socialism, but what I want to talk about in this video today is who were the perpetrators of socialism. On this channel, I talk a lot and I say a lot, and I'm going to say it a bunch more in this video, I ask you guys, the listeners, who are you going to be? This is such an important question when it comes to, socialism, because when we get into, the crux of this video, and also if you guys have been at all following what kind of the central narrative is of the Gulag Archipelago, I know I haven't read any passages in that from a while, but strongly encourage you guys reading that book. One of the main themes running throughout the book is that the reason why all this horrible stuff was allowed to happen was because of a moral failing of every individual. It was a moral failing of normal, everyday people. And it's important to talk about who the victims were. Obviously, this is many tens of millions of people killed in the 20th century over socialist and communist regimes, policies, and totalitarianism. But in order to not have this happen again, we need to think about who the perpetrators are. So let me go ahead and start getting into this. We're going to look at just a number of images from this this discussion or this speech or talk by George Harbison. Let me maximize this. So this image that we're looking at right here is an image taken from, I believe, right around the time that Lenin came into power in the Soviet Union, and created the Soviet Union, rather. And the one thing I want you to notice is look at the crowd here that's just filling up this giant public square. They're holding up flags that are talking about, kind of the glories of what, the socialist and communist system will bring. And the one thing that I want you guys to think about when you look at this image is, are these people here to stop socialism, or are they here in support of socialism? And you'll notice that they are all here in complete support of socialism. And to give them some credit, they had no idea what kind of atrocities and what kind of horrors were going to come about by adoption of this, totalitarian kind of equity-based system, And the one thing I want to mention about all these people is, all these people could be you. Maybe you're a socialist watching this channel. Maybe you think this is good. This woman right here, that could be you. This guy right here, that could be you. And when you look at these people and then you juxtapose that with all the images of mass graves and, horrible famine and malnourished children that you would see in the rest of this talk, when you look at these people here, do you think looking at these faces that these people were capable of doing all that? Like, do you think this woman right here in the corner? Oh, you can't actually see me pointing to her because she's behind the... Let's take this guy right here. Do you think this guy is, a perpetrator of evil? How about these gentlemen over here? Are they, perpetrators of evil? How about everyone in the background here? Are they evil? No, they were just normal people. What ended up happening is they towed the line for the socialist regime, the socialist policy. And what ended up happening is all these people started snitching on each other because the rules were so vague. You know, you've heard me read from the Gulag Archipelago about what the Soviet Criminal Code, Article 58, was. It was so broad and so vague. And what it did was it gave normal people like this the power to snitch on their neighbors and have their neighbors go away for the most random, arbitrary slight. You know, think about somebody who has upset you recently, who has made you mad. Maybe you were really upset. Maybe you were upset to the point of almost wanting to get into a physical altercation with them. I think a lot of men can identify with this. Imagine if you could just say something to the police and they would just get taken away forever. No investigation, no evidence, just a simple accusation, an accusation of guilt, and they would just get taken away forever. Because that's the exact situation that these people were in. You know, they were upset that somebody else had more than them because it has to be all equitable, right? So they'd say, oh, my neighbor, you know, took a piece of grain. Neighbor was gone forever. Then somebody snitched on them. Oh, you know, my neighbor said something bad about Lenin, said something bad about Stalin, off to the gulag. You have to remember that, you know, there's the famous quote that power corrupts and absolute power corrupts absolutely, or something like that, something along those lines. You guys have to realize, and me too, that when we are handed power, it feels good, and it feels good to exercise it. And that's why that's why I say you got to think about who you're going to be, because now you're given power, right? Maybe you're looking to find all the racists. Maybe you're looking to find out who's a conservative. Maybe you're looking to find out who participated in events that happened in January. You know, maybe you're out to get someone. Be careful what you do with that power. Let's look at another image. So here's an image of, you know, Soviet prisoners that are either about to get put on a train or have just gotten off the train to basically be subjected to forced labor and, you know, either execution or starvation. Now, it's sad to see these people being marched into certain conditions. It's obviously really cold. That's why they're wearing, you know, coats and things like that. By the way, though, typically when you got to the gulag, you had to give all this, everything that you had on you, you either had to give up or it was stolen from you. And then you are provided with, you know, collectivized clothing, you know, equitable clothing. Everybody wears the same exact thing. And usually it's incredibly low quality, and a lot of people froze to death because it wasn't adequate to keep them warm. But I want you to think about something else. Look at the train in the background. Who drove that train? In the train, they had people walking back and forth, making sure that the prisoners didn't get out of line. Who were those people that were walking back and forth? You know, at each station, there were people who were loading people onto the trains. Sometimes not knowing where they were going, sometimes knowing exactly where they were going. Who were those people? You know, there were the people who went and grabbed these people out of their house. Who were those people? Those people were normal, average, pedestrian citizens, just like you and me. And the reason why Solzhenitsyn talks about a moral failing of the individual is because they just did their job. They were willfully, or perhaps not willfully, but for the most part, willfully ignorant about what was going on. And that could be you. That's why I'm making this video. That could be me. You know, sometimes the risk of losing your job is too great. Sometimes the need to provide for your family and not have them suffer is too great. And so we just do our job. And that's exactly how this stuff becomes so widespread, is because each of us have the capacity to succumb to power or to wield power against one another. And that's why the United States is so unique, because we give the power, or the power is supposed to be held with us, and we steward that power with the Constitution and with our, Judeo-Christian values. But let's look at another image. There's one specific one that I really want to find. Here's another good one right here. This is again from Soviet Russia. Who's this guy? Who is this guy right here, presiding over all the prisoners who are starving to death and being forced to basically do labor that doesn't produce any value, just break rocks or move one rock from here to over there or push a wheelbarrow around. Who is this guy? Okay. This is one of the most important images, and I went ahead and made it a little bit bigger for you guys so we can really examine this image in more detail. This, I would say, is one of the most powerful images that was shared in the presentation. I believe, again, this is Soviet Russia. And look at the mass grave right here. And they have prisoners just lined up on the edge of the pit so that as the prisoners are shot, they can just dump the bodies directly into the mass grave. And look at all these people surrounding them, including the ones with the rifles drawn. You can see the smoke coming out of here because they've just fired. And, what's the cameraman doing is another interesting question. But again, I want to ask you guys, who do you think these people are right here, lining this and just watching people get summarily executed and thrown into a mass grave? These are regular people, guys. These aren't, they're wearing uniforms, so you might say, oh, well, they're, trained soldiers and stuff like that. But who were they before that? What kind of person were they that hundreds of them will just stand around and watch this happen to people who they know nothing about? These people here who are being executed, they didn't have a trial, guys. They weren't in a courtroom where all these hundreds of people surrounding them were able to ask questions and be able to look at the judicial process and, have everything recorded, in front of a judge and a jury and, all the nice things that we enjoy from the United States justice system. These people right here did not get. Very likely the reason why they're getting executed is because they just simply couldn't work anymore or said that they weren't going to work. That's it. And who's the type of person that pulls the trigger, right? The type of person that pulls the trigger is the person who says, these people harmed me. These people are filthy. These people are dirty. They're the reason that I'm suffering in my life. They're the reason that I have to wait in a bread line. And in my bread line, I actually get bread at the end of it, right? But this is the reason why my life is difficult. This is the reason why I haven't advanced in my career. These people are the reason for this, for that, for this, for that. Equitable treatment, right? Everyone should be equal. Well, how come I'm not getting my equal treatment? How come the government's not giving me my share, my fair share? Well, it's because of these guys. You guys need to realize watching this that could be you one day. When you start otherizing people the way that we're doing right now in our society, it's incredibly dangerous. It's dangerous because right now you guys aren't asking yourself, well, how far am I willing to go to get the evildoers out of the world? No, you're not asking yourself that. And do you think these people, these executioners here were asking themselves that when, they begged for socialism and wanted socialism? No. They weren't asking themselves how far they were willing to go. That's why they're going this far. Because the most nefarious thing about socialism and about these, government command style things and this idea that I deserve and, I'm entitled to and, equity this and it needs to be perfectly fair. The thing about that is it never asks you the question, how far are you willing to go? Who are you willing to expend to make sure that you get what you think you deserve? This is exactly how good people become evil, and this is really the point that Solzhenitsyn makes in his book. Because all these soldiers here, they've been conditioned since they were a very young age to believe that the reason why their lives aren't in the spot that they want, that they think that they deserve, is because of the very people that they're executing. And if they just execute enough of these lazy, beastly, unclean wretches, if they can just rid the world of the evil that's inside these other people, then their life will be fulfilled. So let's take a look at maybe one or two more images. So here's another image right here. This is actually in China. And this is when Mao Zedong was coming into power. And look at all the people that are holding up their little red books. And this is basically the Chinese equivalent of, Karl Marx's Communist Manifesto here. And look at, in some cases, I know my head's blocking it, but you can see smiles on these people's faces. Yes, please. If I give the government my power, if I give Mao and, the Communist Party all my power, they will provide. Don't you see? Don't you see that they'll provide, that they'll give me food, that they'll clothe me, that they'll give me health care, that they'll give me education? Who would say no, right? Guys, again, who are these people? They're you and me. These people are you and me. Any of us could be one of these people. Okay? Yearning for the government to take care of them. Yearning to give away individual autonomy for safety and comfort. Instead, what did they turn into? This. This is an image from the Cultural Revolution. So the first thing that happened in China is the farms were collectivized, and then of course there was a famine, and a bunch of people starved. In this particular video, they share some incredibly gruesome details of what that looked like. Cannibalism, really, really horrible and despicable stuff. Honestly, I'll tell you guys right now, when I watched this, I was tearing up. I was borderline crying at the amount of horror and atrocity that was inflicted on people to ensure the ensure the socialist and communist utopia that was promised by the regime. It's insane. But again, I ask you, look at the people with the guns drawn. This guy's got to be 70 years old. 60-year-old woman right here. So these people were counter-revolutionaries, right? They were the naysayers, basically, of socialism and communism in the universities at the time. Now, we have an interesting situation here where a lot of our universities are full of, happy card-carrying, socialist members, party members. But here, this wasn't the case because, the famine started happening, and some people started to say, oh, hang on, I don't think this is working. And what do you have to do when your equitable policy doesn't seem to be working, or at least people are saying it doesn't seem to be working? Well, you have to get rid of them, right? Because if they tell the truth to the masses, the regime won't be in power. So what do? You convince a bunch of kids, teenagers, people in their early 20s, people who are going to these institutions. Oh, you know who the enemy is now? It's actually your naysaying professors. The socialist utopia would be utopia if it just wasn't for, this 60 and 80-year-old man and woman here. So, who are these people right here? I mean, you can kind of get an idea of how old this guy is almost. I mean, the picture's kind of blurry. Guys, these are 17 and 18-year-old kids. Maybe you're in college and you're watching this. This is you. And you think that you wouldn't be that person. I guarantee it. You're watching this and you're saying, EMPM, you don't know what you're talking about. I'd never be that guy. I never would. Really? Are you sure? You have a wife and you have kids. And someone's threatening your family. What do you do to that person who's threatening your family? Well, you get rid of them, right? Either you call the cops on them and have them taken away, or if you're, a much more ardent person, and depending on how big the threat is, if it's an actual physical threat, someone breaking into your home, and you live in a free state like Utah, and they're trespassing on your property, you blast them out, right? What do you think the threat is that these people in the photo who have the guns in hand, what do you think the threat is to them from the people that they're about to execute? Well, I don't know what the threat is, but I can tell you this much. They legitimately believe that the people that they're about to execute are a threat, and a physical threat, and someone who has done them damages and caused them harm. They look at the people that they're about to execute as you would look at a criminal breaking into your house. Now, do you really think that if you believed that you were executing a criminal who maybe they broke into other people's houses, you think you wouldn't pull that trigger? Me personally, I admit that I'm not a perfect person, okay? If I really believe that these people on their knees with barbed wire or whatever rope wrapped around their hands were a legitimate threat, that they were risking the lives of me and my family, that the reason that my life is so terrible is because these people keep spouting off propaganda messages about, capitalism and the free world of the United States, which I know is actually just, a hate-filled cesspool of poverty. And if only we advance the socialist agenda, then we'll transcend that. That's so backwards in these other countries. A lie from the government, but nonetheless, yeah, I'll pull the trigger. So guys, that's going to be the last photo that we look at from this series. And really, it's important for you guys to watch this talk and this speech. But I want to emphasize again, you need to ask yourself who you're going to be, how far you're willing to go. Right? How far you're willing to go to punish the people that the government tells you are doing you harm. Who is it today? It's conservatives, right? It's racists. It's white supremacists. It's the unvaccinated. They're the reason for all the suffering in the world, right? Gosh, if we could just figure out a way to get rid of them, then your life would be better. That's the message you're getting from people, right? And that's why these incremental steps are so important to push back against. Because right now you're getting convinced of something and you don't even know it. I probably don't even know it fully. Guys, the idea is that there is some evildoer out there who is wishing you harm. Who is it? It's the person unmasked. The unmasked person is trying to maraud around and cough on people and get them sick. They're a threat. Well, if you think they're a threat, how come we don't put them all in camps? How come we don't take the 72 million people who voted for Donald Trump and just throw them in camps? I mean, they're the reason why everybody's life is so difficult, right? They're the reason why you can't get assistance from the government, because the conservatives and Republicans out there are just preventing, everyone else from being productive and exploring all their creative passions like art and painting and poetry. Guys, just think about it, all right? Who are you going to be? Are you going to be the person who stands up for the people who are on their knees right here and says, no, we need a trial. These people need to have a fair trial. It needs to be innocent until proven guilty. We need evidence. We cannot just go and be executing people. Or are you going to be on the other side? Yeah, that person, that person should have got a vaccine. So yeah, destroy their livelihood, that person should have been masking. I would have been safe, had it not for them. Colin Powell would still be alive if it weren't for those unmasked, unvaxxed, conspiracy theorist conservatives. Which side are you going to be on, and who are you going to be? And I know I asked that like 50 times in here, but it's worth stressing. So guys, the last thing I'm going to say is this, and I kind of left a YouTube comment on here alluding to this, but I want to emphasize it here. It takes more than a couple people at the top for 20 million, 30 million, 40 million people to die of a combination of famine, malnutrition, lack of access to clean resources, like water and food, or just summarial execution. It takes more than just 10 people sitting up or 50 people just sitting in their high horse in the Congress chambers or whatever, or in the Senate chambers, for that to happen. For 40 million people to die. It takes people like you and me doing the work for them. So guys, keep that in mind when someone is trying to sell you, first off, that you're a victim, and second off, that it's because of somebody else that there's so much suffering in your life, someone you don't even know. If it weren't for these, saboteurs and evildoers out there, then the government would be able to, breathe in and blow out the breath of God and make everybody's life perfect. If it weren't for them, that's how it would be. No, you guys got to get that mentality out of your head. You are responsible for your own success and failure, especially in a country like the United States of America. Don't let the promise of utopia turn you into people like that. That's all I got. Later, guys.